Hey, brothers and sisters. Today I have a special podcast with one of my best friends, Gage Chambers. He is a firefighter at AFD and he has an amazing story to tell. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this episode has some heavy content. We discuss suicidal ideation, depression, substance abuse, and other sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. That being said, I believe the Holy Spirit is moving powerfully in Gage's life, and his story will bless you and encourage you. So let's get to it. Hey, everybody. Thank you again for listening. Today I got Gage Chambers. How's it going, Gage?
Going pretty great. How about it for you, Joe?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. We just published our first episode and everything, so everything's been going pretty good. I've enjoyed the feedback from everybody, and I think God's going to use it to really benefit and help a lot of people.
Oh,
But
yeah, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree.
yeah, thank you again for interviewing me for that first episode. Really appreciate that.
Oh, of course, man.
All right, man. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about Gage.
Well, I mean, I'd like to be the guy that's always, there's not that much to tell, and I'm always really bad when I get asked this question. But yeah. So like Joe said, I'm Gage. I'm his firefighter buddy. We met at the fire department that I currently work at now, the one that he worked out before.
Yes, sir.
Um, I'm 26 years old, got a huge family, lots of siblings, some adopted, some just kind of taken into the family as I've gone along my journey. Family is definitely one of the most important things to me. Um, I'm in a band. I have the normal hobbies. I like to do all the things like exercise, watch TV, all that stuff. Currently, no kids, no wife, anything like that. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
All right, good, good. How's everything going with fire department?
It's been really good. I was gone for about 3 months.
Hmm.
I had to leave for, I guess, technically a medical reason, which definitely we'll get into later on in the episode. But I just got back at beginning of November and I've just been going full stride since I got back. Things have been really, really good.
Awesome, man. I'm praying for y'all, you specifically, but also the rest of the everybody in the group from the in the fire department and everything, and AFD in general. I miss it a lot. I miss y'all.
We definitely miss you too, man. It's just not the same without you.
Yes, sir. Well, tell us a little bit about your childhood and everything.
Okay, so I guess first things first, I come from what would be considered a broken family. Um, my father, who is now deceased, we'll get into that later too. Him and my mom got divorced when I was 5. They both remarried when I was 6 years old. So my stepdad is definitely, that's my dad for sure, for starters. Um, but I was always raised in the church. I think like a lot of people down here in the Bible Belt.
Hmm.
So I had a very early introduction into religion as a whole. Raised Baptist, um, and I guess early on for me, I definitely I believed that the Bible was true. I believed everything that I was told. As an impressionable child, how could you not believe what you were raised in? But
Yeah, right.
I didn't really have a personal relationship with God until later on, probably in my teens. Even though I do believe that I came to Christ when I was younger, when I was like 6 or 7 years old,
Mhm.
but it didn't really take effect in my life, and I didn't really work on that until much later on in life.
Yeah.
Um, but my nana, especially, my nana is, I guess, like one of the biggest spiritual influences in my life. She was really active in the church at that time. Always has been. She was in a gospel group that traveled all across the southeast. When I was a kid, I would go on tour with them. Sometimes I'd go to their shows.
Hmm.
Um, my family would go to church with her. That was the person that we went with. That's kind of how we started getting involved when I was a younger child. Um, so she's definitely like one of the most influential people in my life when it comes to my introduction to and my journey with faith.
Yeah, nothing like a believing grandma.
I know, no, she's the best, dude.
Yeah, that's awesome,
But
bro.
yeah. So that was kind of my early experience with it. Um, and I guess as I got a little bit older, an older child,
Hmm.
young teenager, and started really questioning everything. Like not specifically with with religion or with Christianity, but just in general, like that was when I really started doing kind of a deep dive into myself and into what faith was going to look like for me.
Okay. What drew you to do that, to start, looking into it deeper and applying it to your life?
Well, I think what started it all, as and this is just from my experience when kids start reaching a certain age, they start developing more of their own core beliefs and their individuality.
Mhm.
And for me, that was probably around 12 to 13. And I think one of the biggest things that influenced that specifically for me was the church that I was going to at the time. At the time, it was Westside Baptist Church,
Yeah.
and I was pretty involved in the youth group there. That was the church that my nana went to. She helped with the Awanas for the younger kids and everything, and the youth group. I would go every Wednesday and every Sunday. Uh, and around the probably a couple months after I started going, there was a guy, and this guy is one of the people I hold truest and dearest to my heart. His name is Jamie, and he was the new youth minister for the youth group. And he didn't stay for very long. He was probably only there for about a year and a half. But it was, God was with him. Like, he was on fire.
Mhm.
And um, there was like a really, really big revitalization of the youth group, and me included in that. And so around that time, probably 12 to 13, where I was already, starting to question what I really believed and just kind of how I saw the world, um, he came into my life and he actually started discipling me. And this was around the same time that my papa, who I was really close to, he got sick. He got cancer for the
Mm.
second time. He had had cancer once before when I was around 7 or 8, but he got cancer again, and it was terminal this time. He had lung cancer and brain cancer,
Oh, man.
and so around the same time where I'm dealing with this significant loss in my life, and I'm already going through all these other mental and physical changes as well. I started my discipleship with him, and he really guided me in
Yeah.
searching for the truth, which, of course, as we know, is Jesus. Um, and like I said before, I always believed in Jesus, but it was at that time where I really started like trying to work on my spiritual foundation and working on my faith as a whole.
So
Um,
was he the husband of the nana you were talking about earlier?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that was my nana's husband. They had been
Okay.
married for I believe 22 years at that point.
Okay. So I'm assuming he was strong with the Lord too, I guess. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, they both were.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He was one of the 4 people in the gospel group with her, and so,
How long were they married?
they were married about 22 years, I think, when he died.
Mm.
So, by the time, I came into the picture, he had
Yeah.
already been around for a long time,
Yeah.
and, that's my mom like, same thing how I said my stepdad is my dad. He's not my mom's biological father, but, that's her dad even
Mhm.
now, that's her daddy. And so, especially with our family, we were always, I would guess, the closest with my nana and papa. We could just because we were geographically, we were the closest as well. But so I was just really, really close with my nana and papa, and they both definitely impacted my spirituality. But like I said, when he was dying and when he got sick, um, I guess in a way that kind of drove me towards answers to all my questions that I had about life. I mean, how could it not when you're dealing with the loss of a loved one? I mean, that always makes people question mortality and the meaning of life and life after death and just all the things. And so,
Yeah, for sure. It's difficult, especially whenever you're younger, thinking about death and morality or mortality. It's scary. Noah had we lost a bunch of people last year, and he was for listeners, Noah's my son. He's having a he's having a hard time dealing with it, especially at the beginning, because he just was afraid that people were gonna die randomly. He was just terrified of it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I know that just because of how close we are, but
Hmm.
he's at that age too, where he's already going to be thinking about things like that now.
Yeah.
And so, when you lose someone or multiple people, unfortunately, in your case,
Hmm.
I mean, it gets even worse.
Yep. Yeah. Be praying for him. So, whenever you started digging into it and getting closer to Christ, how did that? What was that like a dramatic shift for like your behavior and actions and everything, or was it more like a gradual, step by step thing that you were doing with the Lord?
I think for me, it was more of a gradual experience. I didn't have like a bright light experience like some people are
Hmm.
fortunate enough to have. Um, I'm a really analytical person as it is, and so I think in my case, it just had to be more of a gradual experience.
Yeah.
Like as I continued to study the Bible and try to apply it to my life, it just happened over time.
Yeah.
And even now, like it's still happening a lot. That it's not something that ever stops.
Yeah. Always be
Um,
studying.
but I think especially because of other things that I had going on in my childhood at that time, like I had mentioned my father before, who's now deceased. Um, it was around this same time period was when he had started getting really abusive
Hmm.
and his alcoholism had started getting a lot worse. And so, that was just another thing that kind of drove me towards answers like why was I having to deal with that? Why was he the way he was? Why was I in that situation in the first place? And
Yeah.
so, one of the things that was definitely answered for me was that question through learning about God and who He is. Um, Sorry, it's just a hard thing
No, you're
to
good,
actually
man.
sit down and think about. But but so yeah, as time went on and I got a little bit older, probably around the same time that my father actually died when I was 16. Um, I think at that point, for a while, it did drive me deeper into the church,
Hmm.
like as a whole, not necessarily like faith itself, but as into the church, um, because it was a good distraction. It was a good way to
Yeah.
ignore handling the grief and all of the mixed emotions that come when you lose like someone in your life who is abusive towards you.
Yeah.
But so probably from the time I was like 16 to 18, I was really involved in church. I was really involved in the worship team. Like I was in the worship team for the church that I was at the time. It was a smaller church. We had left West Side at that point. Um, so yeah, just for those couple of years, um, I'd like to say that I was like really practicing, practicing what I was preaching, to pull out that old slogan.
Hmm.
Um, but when I sit down and think about it, like in my heart, I really wasn't. Like I wasn't really. I'd kind of walked away from doing quiet times with the Lord. Like I wasn't really doing anything other than going to church on Sunday and
Yeah.
band practice on Wednesday for the worship team. Like I wasn't really doing anything with God other than that.
Yeah. I understand that. It's easy to get into the routine, especially when you're involved in the ministry stuff. It's easy to get burnt out and just look at the stuff more like a task, to do instead of a discipline,
Right.
For everyone listening, just so you know, Gage is a killer musician. Awesome. He plays a bunch of instruments, sings really good. He's great.
I wouldn't go that far. I'm just good enough to
Yeah.
do something with it and not good enough to do anything with it.
Yeah,
So,
we got to plug the band at the end for sure. Definitely gonna plug the band.
well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess that habit, or I guess for lack of a better word, or like that routine, that carried on for a couple of years. I didn't date because I did carry the belief that I shouldn't date until I was ready to get married. And so, of course, when I was a senior in high school, I was like, I'm ready to get married.
Man, it's
And
funny.
so,
It's funny you said that because whenever I was in high school, I read this book it was called "I Kissed Dating Goodbye," and I fully like it's a religious book talking about not dating and stuff like that. Practically, the things that the dude was writing about was really good, and I think most of it was very helpful and smart to do as a high schooler. Not get distracted and focus on school and your faith and family and stuff like that instead of people you're not going to really see for a long time, most of the time. But then the dude was like, a few years later, it was like, yeah, I made all that up just to make a book. I don't believe in any of it anymore.
oh my God.
And I was like, bruh. There's a lot of girls that I liked and I had crushes on. I could have dated them, but that dude steered me the wrong way. It always
I
made me
mean,
mad.
maybe he steered you the right way and kept you from getting,
Well, God,
trapped in a relationship that you didn't
yeah,
need to be in.
exactly. God works in mysterious ways, so he use that. He can use charlatans to give you truth sometimes.
I mean, he can work in any way, really.
Yeah, but
But,
for real though, not dating in high school is a smart idea, I think, for the majority of people. So,
in some ways, I think it was good. In other ways, I do think it was bad.
mhm,
Um, because from a very early age, like, I always knew that I wanted a family, like, I always knew that I wanted to be a dad.
yeah,
And so, because I think in a way because of that lack of, like, romantic connection and not really having an appropriate way to deal with it, because at that time, I love my parents and they're very godly people now. Like, they try their best to do what God wants them to do and to live the way that Jesus calls them to.
hmm,
Um, at that time, they were struggling in their own ways. Like, my dad had a lot of undiagnosed health issues. My mom was dealing with a lot of mental things at that time.
yeah,
And so it I had like this, I guess, longing, for lack of a better word. And I guess the inevitable outcome of that, for like with a lot of young men, is I did develop a pretty bad addiction to sexually explicit material, like pornography and stuff like that.
yeah,
And it got pretty bad. It got to the point where, and it started probably when I was like 15. Um, it got to the point where probably 3 to 4 times a day, like,
hmm,
I was viewing things that I shouldn't be viewing. And my parents, they had covenant eyes, they had like all of these protective measures in place, but I was just smart enough to get around them without getting
yeah,
caught. And so for years, like, that habit carried on, where 3 to 4 times a day, I was doing things that I knew that I shouldn't be doing.
hmm,
And then when I did get my first girlfriend, her name was Danielle. She was great. Of course, it was her, like, first actual relationship too. So there were a lot of things that were not great, just
hmm,
because it was our first time, with each other being in a relationship. But her family was Pentecostal holiness, and for those of you who don't know, it's pretty intense.
hmm,
Um, and I mean, like, and I do, like, even now, like, I love her family. We don't speak or anything. We weren't together for but like 6 months, but
yeah,
I do love her family, and I do think that in the ways that they know they are godly people, um, at least from when I knew them. And so the summer of my 18th birthday, I was still 17 at this point. Actually, like, I even went to a revival with them. And that was actually really awesome. It was an amazing experience, and I'm really glad that I did that. Um, and so shortly after that, we did break up. I still had those same struggles throughout that entire relationship. I still had, like, my addictions to, the pornography and everything, and inevitably that did cause a rift between Danielle and I. Um, and we did end up breaking up. And pretty quickly after that, I turned 18. And I think right around the same time I turned 18 is when I started, like, pulling away from the church, like, altogether, actually. Like, I stopped going to the church that I was going to. I left the worship team. And overall, like, I was just really struggling. Like, I actually have, like, even now, like, I have a lot of mental issues. I have actual clinical diagnoses. We don't have to get into that right now.
hmm,
But I was really, really struggling just in a lot of different ways at that point. The grief from the loss of my father was catching up with me. I still had my addiction, and I had all these other undiagnosed mental issues at the time too. And so around that time, I left the church, and I kind of just started doing my own thing, like, altogether. Like, I left the job that I was working at. I got, like, a big boy job, so I started serving at a restaurant. I started working at O'Charlie's. Um, And I actually, like, one of the people that I met there, they're like one of my best friends now. Her name's Natalie, and her husband's amazing. I love both of them to death. They're like actually family. But when I started working at O'Charlie's, that was when I met Natalie. And this is kind of a longer story. This is just me outlining the journey. And
hmm,
so, um, for probably 5 months, 4 to 5 months, I pursued Natalie. I was like, I really, really like this girl. She goes to church. I like her family. I really wanted to be in a relationship with her, and so for close to 5 months, we were friends and we were hanging out. But I did make it my intentions clear. I was like, hey, I like you. I really want to be in a relationship with you. And finally, when my brother graduated basic training from the Air Force, this is my older brother Nick. Uh, we went out for that week, and while I was gone, I got her to agree to go on a date with me. And so we got back, we went on a date. It was really good, and we dated for all of like 1 month. And then there were some things that had happened, nothing bad per se, but I did find out that she wasn't really ready for a relationship at that time. And so we broke up. I was like, well, if you're not ready, then we can just go our separate ways. And even though on the outside I was acting like I was fine, like that was actually really, really bad for me mentally. And um, that actually led to my first suicide attempt.
Mm.
And before we get into more of that, I just want to say for everyone who's listening, if you are struggling with suicidal ideation, or if you even have a plan, it doesn't have to go that route. There's always another way. There are people who care about you and will be there for you and do anything they can to help you if you just can take that first step to let someone know how bad you're struggling.
Amen.
Even me or Joe, if you want to reach out to one of us so we can pray with you and we can try to work with you on what you're going through, we'd be more than happy to help.
Yeah, there's a link at the bottom of the
But
description that you can. It's like a feedback link. You guys can put it in there. I'd be happy to talk with you, and so would Gage.
100%. No one ever has to go that route. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, even if it doesn't feel like it. But so yeah, get back to me. We broke up, and that kind of sent me on a downward spiral, even more so, because ultimately Natalie was just a distraction from me acknowledging all my issues. And so a couple of months after that, um, like I wasn't even talking to Natalie anymore. Like I'd completely pulled away because of how hurt I was by it, even though I, wanted to say everything was fine. I really wasn't. And so not only did I lose her as a girlfriend, I kind of lost her as a friend for a while. And in that same time period, there was another person who we worked with who was quite a bit older. And I'm not going to give out her name just for safety reasons. But we ended up getting into a relationship of sorts, and it very, very quickly became really toxic. Um, and around this same time, while we were together, I was still mentally struggling a lot, and because of how toxic it was, like it was just making things worse. And so finally, like in June of 2018, I think, my mom was finally like, "Look, if you go see somebody, like I'll pay for it. You need to get help."
Hmm.
And so I did start seeing someone in the town over. Finally got some diagnoses, which was great because it at least gave me some kind of answers.
Yeah.
Um, and then right after that, where she diagnosed me, she actually left the country. She went back to her home country. My therapist did. And so I was like, okay, I have all these answers, but now I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to go from here.
Dang.
And so, yeah, so I pretty much just like took that, ran with it, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, I guess, be mentally ill. And
Now
so,
you were so messed up. She
I
had to
kept
leave
up
the country.
I know, like, dude, it's bad when you like drive a person to flee the country. That's really bad. And so, I just kind of took that, ran with it. I tried going to a couple of therapists, and I just didn't like them, so I just gave up on that altogether.
Yeah.
Just accepted that uh, y- I was gonna be screwed up the rest of my life, which is not a good mentality to have, but I ran with it. Um, the quote unquote relationship with the one girl that I worked with, it just got worse and worse, got more and more toxic. I was this heartbroken little kid. She's this much older lady who, I came to find out later on was, kind of, fooling around with other people too at the same time, which was, at the time it was pretty hurtful for me, but now I don't really care. I get it in a
Yeah.
way, I guess. But so like I was seeing her whenever I could, which was not often, and just working and going to school, and I was drowning. Like I was just really struggling, and as you know, and as I know now, it was because I didn't have like any faith. Like I wasn't leaning on God the way that I should have.
Yeah.
And this habit actually continues even longer for another couple years at least. And so the summer, like the summer I turned 18, or I'm sorry, not 18, the summer I turned 19, I was about to turn 19 at this point. Um, I actually started hanging out with, she's my ex-wife now. I started hanging out with my ex-wife a lot, and it was someone that we had been friends since we were since we were children. Like we'd been friends since we were 7 years old,
Yeah.
and we were really, really close growing up. And then when my family moved when I was in middle school, like we kind of grew apart. But once we were both adults, where we both have cars and it's easier to see each other again, we actually started hanging out again. And I had always had a huge crush on her in elementary school, and as we started hanging out again, I very quickly realized that I had feelings for her. And so uh, we started dating. Uh, and pretty much as soon as we started dating, like we essentially just started living as if we were married, which looking back was probably not the best thing for us. It developed a really big issue of codependency between us.
Hmm.
And so we dated for probably close to like 5.5 years. We dated, and we ended up, finally we got married. Got married March 2nd of last year, and or I'm sorry, not last year, the year before. We got married March 2nd of 23. And so, um, hold up, let me get my math right. Sorry, I'm struggling, guys. No, so it was March of 24. I forget we're in 2026 now.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was March of 24 was when we got married, and things were like really, they were pretty great for probably about close to a year, and or so I thought. And then a couple months after that, I started at the fire department. That's where Joe and I met.
Yep.
One of the best friends I could have ever made,
Yes,
and
sir.
so then when I guess when I started firefighting is when things kind of started taking a nosedive in my marriage. Um, and sorry, this is another thing that's kind of hard to talk about.
No, you're good,
Um,
man. Take your time.
so around January of last year, um, my drinking started getting really bad, to the point where at first I was drinking probably like once a week on a like I'd get off that morning and I'd go home and I'd drink like once a week, but it got to the point where I was drinking like pretty much every day that I was off, where I didn't work the next day. And it wasn't just like having a drink, like I was drinking a bottle every
Mm.
time I had the opportunity to. And there from whenever I did start drinking when I was 18 years old, um, like I'd never really had a healthy relationship with alcohol. And I think a lot of that was just because of my father. Like, he was an alcoholic growing up.
Yeah.
And so I never really had good exposure to like what healthy drinking was. Not that there really is such a thing, but like I was always, even when I was drinking, like earlier on, even though it wasn't frequent, like I was always drinking to get drunk. Like I didn't think there was any in between. I couldn't just have a drink and be fine. Like I had to drink to
Yeah.
try and escape. Like I had to drink to get that feeling of euphoria. And so when my drinking did start getting really bad, um, at first my wife was fine with it. It's like, it was cute, like she would come home from work one day and I'd be a little drunk or whatever. It's like, oh, that's kind of funny, haha. But like it got really bad.
Hmm.
And, I was also working a bunch of overtime, so I was never really home. And so pretty much like I just became like this absent husband.
Yeah.
And um, I was even at the same time, like I was struggling. Like I felt like there was like a lack of communication, and I felt like I couldn't really open up about my mental health or like how I was struggling in my own ways. And so inevitably, like and I'm not going to get into the details just because it's not something that I'm really comfortable disclosing.
Hmm.
Um, but I did end up um, cheating on my wife. Um, whether people want to think it was emotional or mental or whatever, that doesn't matter. Cheating is cheating. And so I did cheat on my wife. And that was, of course, extremely harmful for her. Very, very hurtful. How could it not be? But we actually like we started working on things, and we started going to therapy. Like we were doing couples counseling once a week. Um, and I was still going to therapy. Like I finally started going to therapy on my own, which was actually really, really good. And it even got to the point where, like even though I wasn't living at home at this time, like we got to the point where we were good enough where we were doing couples counseling once every other week, and like I had started sleeping over at the house again. Like even if I was just sleeping on the couch, like I was still staying there. Um, and I had told myself I wasn't going to drink anymore, and I was done with that, and I was kind of just white knuckling it. Like I wasn't really doing anything other than saying I wasn't going to drink. So of course that didn't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it got to the point where I might would have one drink whenever we'd hang out with someone, and that'd be fine. And very quickly that got to the point where like I was, you know, ordering like whenever we'd want dinner or whatever and we didn't want to cook, like I would wait to go order the food until I got to the restaurant just so I could sit at the bar and I could try to have as many drinks as possible before I'd get home.
Mm.
And of course that wasn't much. Like I'd have like 2 beers, but it was the fact that I was trying to hide my drinking um, from my
Yeah.
wife, and trying to explain away why it was fine or try to diminish the severity of that. And then it even got to the point where like I was like sneaking drinks at the house again. Like it was really disgusting behavior. And in this entire time, like I'm still, even though like I believe in God and like I still believed in Jesus, and I do still think I was saved at that time. I don't think you can lose your salvation. Like I had completely neglected my relationship with Christ, and I had chosen to replace that with drinking.
Yeah.
And so things at that point were still okay. Things were somewhat getting better between my wife and I. And the day before my birthday, I'd actually the day before that I just moved back into the house. Like she was fine with me moving back in. And so like I unpacked my car, my suitcase, I cleaned out my car, and I was like, okay, things are good again. And I guess like that sense of comfort was like my downfall, because the following day, the day before my birthday, I went to a pool party at for the manager of a place that I used to work at. Him and I were always cool, and so he had invited me, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, I'll go. And she was fine with me going. She'd even said that she was going to make dinner, so it's like we had plans. I wasn't going to stay super long, and so I got to the party. Things were fine. I had had like one beer, and it was cool. And then the guy got there, and he was like, well, let's do a shot. And of course, I wasn't going to say no. And so I took that shot, and you know, it got really bad from there. Um, I took that shot, and I just kept drinking, and I kept drinking, and I kept drinking. It was like I had opened this door that I tried to keep closed, and I ended up probably around 4 o'clock that afternoon, like I was already blackout drunk. And I remember coming to like around 7 that evening, and I was supposed to be home already
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And I go and I check my phone because it's a pool party. I had been in the pool. Like I came to in the pool. It's surprising to me how I didn't drown, because I was blackout drunk. Um, but I go and I check my phone. I'm like, wow, it's dark outside. What time is it? So I go and check my phone, and I've got like a bunch of text messages, a bunch of missed calls from her, from my mom, from my best friend. And like then I look up and I see my mom, and my mom's at this party. Like she doesn't know these people. She literally just pulled up to the function because she was at the time. I was like, why are you here? And so um, I see her, and she's like crying and everything, and I'm like, what's going on? Why are you so upset? And she says to me, do you just realize that you've just thrown away everything? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so then like I start looking at my phone, like trying to figure out what had happened. And it turns out that I had sent a text message to one of my friends who was at the party, um, who then screenshotted that message and sent it to my wife. Like no explanation, just sent it to my wife. And my wife screenshotted that and sent it to me. And she's like, what's going on? Are you okay? Because she was like genuinely concerned. Um, and, you know, from there, things kind of snowballed really quickly for me, and so I went with my mom. She had brought my older brother, um, not my older brother Nick, my adopted brother Brandon. She had brought him, and he drove my car back home. Like I rode with him, and he drove my car home the whole time. Like I'm calling my wife, trying to like apologize, trying to explain away what had happened, and we get back to the house, and I'm still drunk. I'm trying to tell them that I'm not drunk. I'm trying to tell them like, hey, like it's not that bad. Like I'm fine. Things are gonna be okay. And obviously things were not okay. And
Yeah.
so I remember like when we got home and I was changing, and this is kind of what made me realize like how bad things had gotten for me and how bad I had spiraled down into the abyss was like I'm arguing with my mom through the door. Like my door is shut, like I'm trying to change out of my swim trunks, I'm trying to put on some clothes, and I'm like sitting there telling her I'm not drunk, it's not that bad, like I'm not as drunk as you think I am. Like I'm not yelling at her or anything. I don't yell. But I'm arguing with my mom about why I'm not drunk when I'm very obviously drunk. And she literally like busts open the door, and she like comes into the room like intending to slap me because she's so upset. Which like we've discussed that. Like we're good about that. She's apologized. I've forgiven her for that.
Hmm.
And so like my dad comes out of nowhere, like he picks her up and like carries her out of the room. And as he's pulling her out of the room, she tells me, "You're just like your father."
Man.
And that sentence was what made me realize like how bad I had gotten. I sure like I wasn't an abusive husband, like I didn't beat my wife, I didn't yell at her, I didn't do any of the things to other people that my father did to me or to my mom or anything.
Hmm.
But in a different way, like I was just as bad as he was. I was a bona fide alcoholic, and I tried to fight that for so long. And her saying that was what it took for me to realize like it didn't not anything else that had happened before that in my life. Like when I woke up in a puddle of my own urine, when I would go and lay in the shower for hours at a time because I was so drunk.
Hmm.
It was that one sentence that made me realize that I was an alcoholic and that like I was dying. And so after that, like I changed and they said, "Can you come into the living room because we want to talk?" And my dad, who's not an emotional person, like he starts talking to me and he's so upset on my own behalf because he sees the way I'm ruining my life, that he like starts crying. And I've seen my dad cry like twice. It was once when our one of our family dogs died, which was his dog, and then once when my papa died. Those are the only two times I've seen my dad cry. And that combined with what my mom had told me a couple minutes before, I was like, okay, something's got to change. Like I literally can't do this anymore. And so the following day, my mom went with me, and we went and we packed up as much as I could fit in my car from my house where my wife and I lived, because we were separating at that point. And that same day, I also made a phone call and decided that I was going to get help, like for my alcoholism. Decided I was going to go to rehab. But at that point in time, I didn't think I still didn't think that I was as bad as anyone else. Like I was like, no, it's not that bad. Like I just
Hmm.
need some help, but like I'm not near as bad as all these other people who are like drunks who are like losing all their money on drinking. Like I still have a job, all these other things, yada yada yada, all these excuses. And
Yeah.
so I made a phone call to this facility called All In Solutions. And one of the things that was really stuck out to me was that it was a faith-based recovery center. And so I made the phone call. I talked to the guy on the phone for like 2 hours, and he kind of gave it to me straight. He was like, "Look, you're just a high functioning alcoholic, but you're still an alcoholic." And what ended up happening was I ended up going to New Jersey for 3 months. Um,
Yeah. I
did
remember.
not plan on that happening.
Yeah, I remember when you texted me
Y-
and was telling me about it and everything. I was like, "Oh, dang!" It was
Yeah,
I
like I
was
would have.
I was worried about you a lot whenever 'cause I remember you texted me whenever all that stuff was going down, and we've been talking, like just for work, and we're still good friends and everything like that. But then that was like a moment that really hit hard for me like like God was like, okay, I need you to walk in now for Gage because I'm about to do
Yeah.
something. I'm about to do something for him, and I need you to be there. So I'm like
Oh,
that whole
100%, dude.
that whole that whole experience was rough. And I remember like like how we talked about in my episode, like the guilt and pain that I feel from hurting uh my wife with all the things that I did. It just broke my heart, for you. I was just really, I just felt a lot of sympathy for you, and because that's a terrible feeling for a man to go through. So,
Yeah. No, definitely, like, I'm not excusing any of my behavior in any way,
mhm.
but even now, like, I still feel the emotional, like, after effects of that, and, like, I'm sorry for yapping, I'm just you already know
No,
I'm a
you're
I'm a
good.
yapper. I talk a lot, but,
Yeah, you're good.
I'll try to summarize it real quick. So, yeah, I went to New Jersey, not in my plans at all. Um, Stayed there for initially, it was just gonna be 30 to 45 days, and my wife was like, "Well, I'm not gonna do anything or make any decisions till you get back, until we can sit down and talk." Um, and when I got out of detox, even though, like, I didn't drink, 'cause I waited 9 days to leave after I made the phone call. I didn't drink the entire time. I was like, "Okay, I can't do this anymore. I gotta change." And so I didn't drink, but I still had to go to detox. So I went to a detox facility for 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and, then I was like, "I'm only gonna stay for another 2 weeks," but very quickly I realized that, like, I needed to be there longer. And so I ended up staying for 30 days, and then I stayed for 60 days, and then I ended up staying for 90 days. Because I just knew that I wasn't ready. Like, I knew that I had more things that I needed to work on.
Yeah.
And it was while I was in detox, because you don't get your phone, like, you don't get access to the outside world at all.
Hmm.
And so while I was there was when I really started, focusing on my faith again and my walk with Jesus, because I had pretty much neglected it. Like, sure, I was reading my Bible every day, but, like, I was more like I'm just so I can check this box. It was like a routine thing, like, I wasn't really doing
Yeah.
anything. And so I started reading my Bible a lot. Like, I started reading spiritual books. Like, I started reading anything that I could get my hands on, to deepen my knowledge and my relationship with Christ. And, like, I started praying a lot. And, like, it was in that detox facility where I think I really started coming back to Christ. Kind of like, the prodigal son.
Hmm.
But Yeah. And while I was there, when I first got out of detox, my wife told me she wanted to separate. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I get it. My actions still have consequences. Obviously, it wasn't what I wanted, but even in that moment, I was like, "Well, I have to recognize how much I've really broken her from my actions." And
Yeah.
so I accepted that, and it was about a month after that was when she told me that she wanted a divorce, and I was like, that was really hurtful for me. But at the same time, it's nothing compared to the hurt that she felt, and so I had to accept that too. And I wanna say, like, the only reason I think that I was able to accept that outside of, like, working a 12-step program was because of my relationship with God and, like, how much I had really started focusing on that.
Yeah.
Um, because without that foundation of faith and without that foundation of, like, the love of Christ that, is literally just mind-boggling, like, why would he love me after all the things that I've done? It was only because of that that I was able to get through something like that, because regardless of the circumstances, it's the death of a person, really.
Yeah, it's so difficult to get to make it through, especially like even with God, it's very difficult to get through because it's just so incredibly painful.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Even with my situation being what it is, like, even though it was, obviously there were other things too, like, it wasn't just
Hmm.
because of my drinking or other things, but even, like, with the driving factor being me, it's still devastating to me. How could it not be when this is someone that I've known since I was 7 years old. This is a
Yeah,
19-year friendship that I'm losing. This is a 7-year relationship that I'm losing. Like, this person has literally been in my life for a third of my life almost, like,
yeah,
as far as as a romantic partner. And so even more so because of it being really my fault, like, it's something that I was only able to get through because of God. And, like, I'm still only able to get through because of God. And so
yeah.
yeah, I left. Sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off.
Oh yeah, you're good. I was just gonna say, I don't know how uh, I could have done it without him. I really was down and depressed whenever I got divorced, and I don't see how like if anybody's going through that kind of stuff without God, implore you to please give him a chance to help you out because it's you don't need to go through that alone, and He knows you better than anybody can help you out.
Definitely. And one of the things I think is so amazing and um is that to my knowledge, like even if you look at it just from like a religious perspective, God and then, of course Christ is the only person as far as like a deity from like a theological perspective that meets you exactly where you are. Like I didn't have to do all of these things. I didn't have to say all the right words. Like I don't have to be in a specific place to know God. Like God meets me exactly where I am. And that alone is such a powerful thing for me.
Hmm.
So pretty quickly after that, I left the facility. I got back home. I made sure that I got all the rest of my stuff out of the apartment. Started finalizing divorce and everything. Um, but so yeah, I mean that's pretty much that's my story in a nutshell. And then as far as like what my turn away from Christ, and then like my eventual coming back to Him. Um,
So what's your relationship like now with God? Now that you've gone through all that and you're still everything's still kind of fresh and start. How does it look for you?
I mean, dude, it's definitely a lot deeper for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I still have my moments just like any other person where I really, and especially just me as an individual, like I struggle with self-doubt and anxiety. And so like I'll have my moments where I'll doubt, how could God love someone like me? How could God send his only son to die for someone like me, someone who's
Yeah.
just absolutely abhorrent. But overall, it's one of the only things that's getting me through right now. Um I would say honestly it's the only reason that I'm here. I'd mentioned it before, I had that suicide attempt. I actually had two more that I didn't touch on just because I didn't think they were relevant at the time. Um, or even in that moment where, I was blackout drunk in a pool and like somehow didn't drown. There's been a bunch of moments like that where it's like obviously God still has something for me. Like
Yeah.
I still have things that He has for me to do here. Um, and that's one of the main things that gets me through is the fact that I know that God loves me enough to save me from situations where I shouldn't be here.
Hmm.
Save me from an abusive father, save me from suicide attempts, save me from my own drunkenness. Like there's so many things that could have happened and all of those moments where I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you today. And that fact is such a powerful thing for me to know that even though I doubt myself and, I criticize myself on such a deep level, that God like looks past all of that, that He just sees me
Yeah.
for me, and that He meets me where I am and He picks me up off the ground every time I fall if I
He's
just let Him. Like that's literally all it is.
yeah, he's so incredibly merciful, like way beyond anything that we can comprehend. And it feel to us it just doesn't feel like well, I don't feel like I deserve it at all. Like especially with all the nonsense I've done. I really in my mind it's easy to think about like somebody hurt your feelings or irritates you or whatever is it's easier to forgive them. But man, like I catch myself a lot, and God's been working on me a lot with this. Is that I'll see on a show or I'll hear about some rumor about somebody and them doing something terrible, you know, and then I think, man, how how much of a loser they are. They're terrible, and then God's been like, you did the same thing like years ago. You're in the same position. You're in the same you have the same sin. It just looks differently for you. And this really has been hard to deal with that, but like being, it's easy to be judgmental and then not think about, your own past and think about what Christ has done in your own life to get you to where you're at now. Like, it's easy to fall into being the other brother and the prodigal son parable, the one that is jealous and angry and feels like it's not fair that the father took the son back that squandered all of his money on drinking and to make it modern, drinking, drugs, and women and everything else like that. That's what he spent all of his time and money on, was that, instead of being with his father. And he had been with his father the whole time, so he's irritated. But we need to not we need to put ourselves more in the father's viewpoint, of seeing somebody that's lost and rejoicing that they're found, and not being looking at them like they're lesser than us because they struggle, or they're struggling more than we are right now.
Absolutely, dude. I think one of the and this is a verse that I love a lot, and I mean it's might be one of my favorite, if not my favorite verse from the Bible currently. Um, it's Hebrews 12:6-8. And it's where it
Mm.
says, "For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he punishes every son he receives. Endure suffering as discipline. God is dealing with you as sons. For what son is there that a father does not discipline? But if you are without discipline, which all receive, then you are illegitimate children and not sons." Um, and that passage right there is, dude, is so strong. Like there's just so much in there that I love,
Amen.
and it reminds me that even though my discipline or my suffering might not have looked like someone else's, it doesn't change the fact that, like, even now, like even dealing with the ramifications of a divorce, like anything like that, like this is discipline. This is discipline from God because of what I did. And like that's just something that gets me through, knowing that
Hmm.
it's a reminder that when I sit there and I say to myself, how could God love me? Like I don't love myself. Like I'm just this disgusting human being. And then I remember like all the things that I've been through and with where I'm at right now. Like God is disciplining me in this moment. He's admonishing
Yeah.
me for my mistakes. And furthermore, discipline is something that sets you back on the right course. Like discipline is something that corrects you into doing something the right way going forward.
Yeah.
And so for me, dude, like it's such a powerful reminder of how much God loves me. Like outside of
Mhm.
every other reminder
Yeah.
that there is, it's such an awesome thing for me to know that God still has me in his hand.
Amen. I think like with your testimony specifically, it's powerful to me because this isn't like uh like with mine. I'm talking to whenever I did my episode, and I was talking about how my faith is better now and everything like that, but it took like a few years. Like with yours, you're fresh, you're fresh out of this stuff. Like the stuff you're talking about is happened very recently, like within the past few months and stuff like that. And you know people can see your testimony and hear how God's working in your life now. And it's still a long process to get you where you need to be. But it's encouraging to see how God has corrected you, shown you the right path, and put you on it, and how you're being faithful and moving toward Him. Even if you mess up, and even if you need help, He's still there to help you, and still is bringing you closer to Him. Even at this fresh time, wherever everything's still, it's like an open wound. So I barely. I'm happy you got on this, and you know, just I'm glad that I could be
Dude,
a part of your life, and be there for you. And it's been you're one of my best friends. I love you very much, and I'm glad that I was worried about you a lot and praying for you a lot. And it just I love God so much because whenever I think about you, and I see a lot of myself, and I get to I'm witnessing His mercy and His love and His forgiveness and His redemption with you. And it just it really touches my heart to see God doing that for people in my life.
dude, and I love that, and I'm so thankful that he's put you in my life, like to be a part of my own journey. Because like I definitely, you're one of the biggest influences when it comes to like spiritual counsel. And just to kind of touch back on like what you were saying, like with my testimony and everything, like all of these things that I hate about myself, like all these things that I've done, like all my past, all my prior sin, I think it puts me in such a unique position. Um, like you had mentioned about the other brother from the story of the prodigal son.
Hmm.
Um, Me being where I'm at, like it just puts me in such a unique situation, and like it gives me such a unique perspective to know all of these things about myself, and then to take that and apply it to other people. You know, like for me to sit here and to know all of these things that I've done and to like to know my own heart, um, it makes it so much easier for me to love other people just for who they are and not for, you know, where they've been in their life, like whether it be a product of their own circumstances or like their own actions or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm able to look past all of that and I'm able to just see people. And you know, I'm not perfect either. You know, I definitely have my own struggles with pride. You know, I'm my own struggles with all the other things like lust and wrath and all the other things, but I'd like to think that all the things that have happened in my life, they allow me to try and see people the way that Christ sees us, you know,
Yeah.
just to love them for who they are. And I mean, it's just such an awesome thing, dude. Like I hate the sin, and I definitely like I hate all the things that I've done, but I am thankful. Like in this moment, I'm thankful for where it's put me now and where I'm at in my life to be able to help other people.
Yeah.
Um, like for example, um, the I have two people that I got really really close to while I was at the rehab facility in New Jersey, and you know, of course, I hate my situation. Like I hate the fact that I'm got a divorce. You know, like that's something I'm not proud of, but I'm blessed, like, because I have a home, and with that divorce happening, I had to move back into that house, and it allowed me to provide an opportunity for 2 other people who I got really close to, who are really, like, fighting for their sobriety and for their faith, like, their walk with Christ. It allowed me to give them a safe place to do that,
Yeah.
and, like, I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I was still with my wife. You know, of course, I like,
Hmm.
I love her still, like, even as a person, like, I love her. But I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing right now, helping other people, if it was not for that.
Yeah. And
And,
and
you
Genesis.
know, there's so many other things that I wanna do now because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And in Genesis, the story of Joseph, at the very end of it, whenever he reveals himself to his brothers and reconciles with them, he says to them, like what you meant for evil, God meant for good and for the salvation of many lives. So it's awesome to see how God can use terrible things, that we do or other people do, um, to bring us closer to Him and to bring us like to help other people. So that's awesome. Like maybe you go through all this stuff that you went through, and God's using it to help other people. If you're going, if listeners, if you're going through a circumstance or going through something that's difficult, a trial, or you're struggling with your own sin, God can use you, no matter what you're doing, where you're at in your walk with Him. He can still use you. So just keep that in mind.
No, and that's 100% true. Like, that's one of the things that I love the most about the gospel, dude, is, like, Jesus didn't come for the people who had it all together. Like, if not that anyone does, like, if we had it together, we wouldn't need God in the first place. No one has it together. But,
Yeah.
like, he came for the sick and the broken. Like, he came for the prostitutes and the homeless. Like, dude, he came for the people who are struggling the most. And so like just like Joe said, you know, like God can use anything. He can use anybody in any position in any situation at any point in their life. Like you don't even know. Like there's so much that God can do with you.
Amen.
I mean, I'm the perfect example of that. Like he's taken my brokenness and my disgustingness and he's using it for his glory, like in a way that I would have never thought possible.
Yeah. I did have a question for you. So with your father, your biological father, you mentioned about him struggling with alcoholism and all the things that he did. Now, whenever you look back at it on your relationship with him and about his life now, how do you view him and how do you feel about him in light of like your own struggles with alcoholism and everything.
I mean, of course, it's still it's still nuanced,
Hmm.
but I think now, and I think some of it's just because I'm a grown man now. I'd like to think, but that like with combined with my addiction to alcohol, it allows me to view him with a lot more grace. Like even now, like I don't excuse
Yeah.
the behavior. Like I don't excuse the abuse that went on for years. Like I don't condone any of that. But I do forgive him. Like it's a lot easier to look at where he was at in his life and see the ways that he was struggling and forgive him for that. And furthermore, like it makes me sad in a way because
Hmm.
he was really struggling with it for so long, and it was almost like it was a cry for help. And you can't help anyone until they are ready to receive help.
Right.
So I really don't think that there was anything that could have been done before he was ready for that. But it does allow me to give him a lot more grace. Um, and ultimately, I think that a lot of the grace that I'm able to give it comes from the grace that God's given me.
Hmm.
But
Well, before we wrap everything up, I just wanted to say for listeners, if you're struggling with substance abuse or suicidal thoughts or anything like that, like we mentioned before, please reach out to somebody. You can reach out to me or Gage, or reach out to your pastor, your friends and family. Reach out to somebody so you're not going through that stuff alone. Substance abuse is no joke. Like, I've dealt with it. Gage obviously just talking about it. He's dealt with it. It's difficult, but you can overcome it with Christ, and you can overcome it with believers in your life, men and women that care about you and want what's better for you. So I just wanted to mention that and everything. But before we hop off, Gage, is there anything else you'd like to share, or like if you could sum it up and one thing you could tell people about God and that you think that they should know from your testimony, what would that be?
that's a really good question. Um, I I could talk all day about God and what I would love for people to know about Him if they don't already. But I think one of the things that's most important for me is the fact that it doesn't matter how broken or how undeserving you think you are of love. As someone who's struggled with that so much for their entire life, like not loving themselves or not thinking that they deserve to be loved or that they have to even earn it. None of that's true. Um, the only thing that you have to know is that even knowing all of the things that He does about you, God still loves you enough for Jesus to die for you. And if you can just accept that and if you can just give Christ a chance, then I promise like He'll meet you exactly where you are. And I know that because He did it for me. And
Amen.
it's life changing.
Amen. Thank you, brother, for hopping on with us and everything. Tell us your band name.
So yeah, my band name is the Creature Preachers. We're on all the streaming services. I will follow all that up to say that we're not that good, but if you feel like you want to, please give check us out. Give us a listen. We're on all the streaming services. We're on all the social medias. So yeah, that's us.
He's being modest. They are really good. So you guys should check them out after you listen to this podcast and everything. Had to plug the band, but yeah. Again, thanks, Gage, for hopping on with us.
Well,
And
I appreciate it.
yeah, yeah. I love you, bro. I thank you for being on and being with us today and sharing your testimony. I believe it's something that's very powerful, and it just really gives God glory because He's powerful enough to save you and change you and help heal you. So, and I hope everybody listening understands that. And well, if you're not already, give, like Gage said, give Christ a chance so you can experience that redemption. Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like for us to pray for you?
For me specifically, just that God would continue to work in my life. I still have so many things that I struggle with. I'm still human. So just that God would continue to move in me and to call me closer to Him.
All right, sounds good. We'll do that. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for listening and tuning in for us. Or again, just check the description in the bottom of the video. give you our guest application page if you want to be on the podcast and share your testimony. We'd love to have you, and God would love to use your story to help other people. There's also a little link to a feedback form. So if God is moving you, or we'd love to hear your feedback about how this episode or any of our other episodes have helped you in your faith, because that's always really encouraging for us to get your feedback. But yeah, Gage, if you don't have anything else, I'll close this in prayer.
That sounds great, man.
All right. Father God, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for my brother Gage and for bringing him on this podcast. And I thank you so much for lining up our lives to where we could meet each other at the fire department and at the training center. I didn't know it at the time, but you had put someone in my life that was going to be there for the rest of my life, a best friend, a brother, someone who could sharpen me and I could sharpen him, and to grow closer to you. So I appreciate everything that he's done for me, and I thank you so much for him, and I pray for your blessing on him. I thank you for your redeeming power and your ability to change sinners and turn us back to you and turn us back to the way of life. So I pray that you'd fill him with abundant life. I pray that you'd fill everybody that's listening to this podcast now with your Holy Spirit and with life. And I pray that we'd continue to help people through this podcast, and that you would be glorified in it. We love you and we praise you. In your son's name I pray. Amen. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you have a great day. Please like and subscribe. Share this with your friends so other people can hear the word of God. And to God be the glory.